Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
My partner and I got engaged last year after dating for 5 years. We're both pretty practical people, so we saved up for 2 years to have the wedding we actually wanted instead of going into debt. We found this beautiful venue about an hour outside the city, nothing too fancy, but it had these huge windows overlooking a lake and came with tables, chairs, and basic decorations included. The price was reasonable, and we booked it 18 months in advance because it's pretty popular. Planning the wedding was mostly smooth. We kept the guest list to about 80 people, booked a local caterer, hired a photographer, and sent out invitations 2 months early. My partner's family is pretty chill, but my side of the family can be complicated. There's always some drama brewing, usually involving my aunt and her daughter, my cousin. My cousin is 26, 2 years younger than me, and she's always been the type who thinks the world revolves around her. When we were kids, if I got a new toy, she'd throw a fit until she got the same one. If I made honor roll, suddenly her B+ average was just as good and deserved the same celebration. My aunt always enabled this behavior, constantly making excuses for her and expecting everyone else to accommodate whatever my cousin wanted. About 3 weeks before my wedding, when I was in full planning mode trying to finalize details with vendors, I got a text from my cousin that made me think she was joking. She asked if she could use my venue earlier that day for her ceremony, saying they'd be out before my stuff started. I stared at my phone for a full minute. She'd been dating this guy for maybe 8 months, and far as I knew, they weren't even engaged. I texted back asking if she was serious. She told me she was totally serious and explained that the venue was already decorated, and it's not like they'd stay for the reception. They just needed like an hour for the ceremony. When I asked if she was even engaged, she said they decided to do a spontaneous thing and it would be so romantic. I asked her if she really wanted to use my wedding venue on my wedding day for her spontaneous wedding. She told me not to be dramatic and said there was plenty of time between ceremonies. I called her immediately because this was too insane to handle over text. I asked if she was completely out of her mind. She wanted to know why I was being so negative and said she thought I'd be happy for her. I told her I wasn't happy, that she wanted to hijack my wedding venue on my wedding day. She insisted she wasn't hijacking anything and said the venue was just sitting there in the morning doing nothing. She called it wasteful not to use it. I reminded her that it was my venue that I paid for my wedding that I'd been planning for over a year. She pointed out that I wasn't using it until 4 p.m., so they could have their ceremony at 12 p.m. and be completely gone by 2 p.m. She said the decorations were already going to be perfect. I asked her about the decorations that I paid for and chose specifically for my wedding. She said exactly they'd save so much money and I wouldn't have to do anything extra. I told her the answer was no and that this was insane. She called me really selfish. I asked how I was being selfish for not letting her use my wedding venue on my wedding day. She said it was just a few hours when I wasn't even using it and she couldn't believe I wouldn't help family. I hung up on her. 20 minutes later, my aunt called. She said she heard there was some drama about the wedding venue. I explained that her daughter wanted to have her wedding at my venue on my wedding day. My aunt said my cousin had explained the situation to her, and it did seem like there was plenty of time between events. I asked if she was serious right now. She said she was just saying it was a beautiful venue, and it seemed wasteful to have it sitting empty all morning. She reminded me that my cousin was family. I explained that it wasn't sitting empty, it was my venue on my wedding day. The vendors would be there setting up, the photographer would be doing prep shots, and I'd be getting ready. My aunt said surely I could work around a small ceremony since my cousin was my cousin. I told her that being my cousin didn't give her the right to my wedding venue. My aunt said she was just heartbroken that I wasn't willing to share on such an important day and that this was really dividing the family. I told her I wasn't dividing anything and that my cousin was the one making unreasonable demands. She said it wasn't unreasonable to ask family for help. I explained that help was borrowing a cup of sugar, not asking to share my wedding day. She thought I was overreacting, so I hung up on her too. Over the next few days, I got calls from 3 other relatives who'd somehow heard about the situation. 2 of them actually took my side, which was surprising, but my grandmother called and suggested maybe we could work something out because family is family. The pressure was getting to me. I started second guessing myself. Was I being unreasonable? Then my partner reminded me that we'd never ask anyone else to share their wedding venue on their wedding day, and that helped me remember how crazy this whole thing was. 2 days later, my cousin texted again. She said she'd been thinking about our conversation and wanted to apologize. I thought maybe she'd come to her senses, but then she said she was sorry for not giving me more notice and asked if it would help if they paid for half the venue cost. I told her the venue was already paid for and no, she still couldn't use it. She asked what if they paid for the flowers. I explained that the flowers were already ordered and paid for, and she couldn't use my venue. She said she didn't understand why I was being so difficult about this. I reminded her that it was my wedding venue on my wedding day. She told me fine, be selfish and not to blame her when this ruined family relationships. That's when I decided I'd had enough. I called the venue and explained the situation. The manager was shocked and assured me that only people on my approved list would be allowed access that day. I also called my photographer and caterer to give them a heads up about potential family drama. The wedding day arrived, and guess what? My cousin showed up at the venue at 11 a.m. with her boyfriend and about 15 people, expecting to have their ceremony. The venue manager turned them away, and my cousin called me, screaming about how I'd ruined her special day. My wedding was absolutely perfect. The venue looked gorgeous, the food was amazing, and we had the best time celebrating with people who actually respected us enough not to try to hijack our day. My cousin's spontaneous relationship didn't even last another month. Her boyfriend was pretty horrified by the whole venue situation and realized what kind of person he was dating. He broke up with her 2 weeks after my wedding. My aunt still won't talk to me, but honestly, that's been more of a blessing than a punishment. And my cousin has moved on to causing drama about someone else's life events, so I'm off the hook. I've been working in factories for about 15 years now, mostly as a setup operator. The job requires you to know all the machines inside and out, troubleshoot problems, and make sure everything runs smoothly for the regular operators. At this particular factory, I've been working for 3 years. We manufactured automotive parts, and the work never stopped. We ran 3 shifts around the clock, and coordination between shifts was critical. One mistake during handover could shut down production lines and cost thousands of dollars. Our system had worked perfectly for years. Each shift was scheduled for 8.5 hours with a 30-minute unpaid lunch break. The magic happened in that 30-minute overlap between shifts. The outgoing shift would walk the incoming shift through every single machine, explain any issues, point out what maintenance was needed, and make sure nothing got missed. As a setup operator, I was responsible for coordinating with operators on 5 different production lines, checking hydraulic pressures, monitoring temperature controls, and ensuring all the quality control measures were properly documented. During those handover periods, I'd spend 5 minutes at each machine with the outgoing operator, going through a checklist that covered everything from tool wear to material inventory levels. Then I'd spend another few minutes with the lead man going over the production schedule and any special orders that needed attention. It was detailed work that couldn't be rushed. Everything changed when the new finance director showed up. This guy was fresh out of business school and had big ideas about efficiency. He spent a few weeks walking around with his clipboard, timing everything we did and calculating costs. One morning, our plant manager called a meeting with all the setup operators and lead men. He announced that they had identified an area where they could reduce labor costs. The 30-minute shift overlap was costing them money that they didn't need to spend, according to the finance team's calculations. Our lead man tried to explain that we needed that time to properly hand over the machines because there was a lot of information to transfer. The plant manager dismissed his concerns and said that from the following Monday, shifts would start immediately when the previous shift ended. The lead men would handle all coordination instead. I asked how one person was supposed to cover information for 5 production lines. The plant manager told us we'd figure it out and explained that this change would save the company money while reducing our paid hours from 8 to 7.5 per day. I looked around the room. Every setup operator and lead man had the same expression of disbelief. Our lead man was a good guy, but he was already stretched thin, managing his own responsibilities. He told them he didn't think this was going to work because there was too much technical information for one person to handle alone. The finance director bragged about how he had eliminated similar inefficiencies at his previous company and seen immediate cost savings. He was confident this would work here too. When I asked what would happen when machines went down because critical information wasn't passed along, he replied that it wouldn't happen if everyone did their job properly. The meeting ended with the new schedule taking effect the following Monday. I went home that weekend knowing exactly what was going to happen, and I decided I wasn't going to work for free to fix their mistake. Monday morning arrived and I showed up at my new start time, not a minute earlier. I walked onto the production floor to find all 5 of my production lines completely shut down. Operators were standing around looking confused and frustrated. The first operator thanked God I was there and told me they didn't know what was wrong with line 3 because it kept jamming. The second operator explained that line 5 was running parts that were all out of spec and they didn't know what settings to use. The third operator mentioned that the hydraulic pressure on line 1 was acting weird and asked if they should keep running it. I started checking each machine systematically. Line 3 had a tool that was completely worn out and should have been replaced during the previous shift. Line 5 had temperature settings that were completely wrong for the current material. Line 1 had a hydraulic leak that could have caused major damage if they'd kept running. It took me 45 minutes just to assess all the problems, and another hour to get everything running properly. During this time, absolutely nothing was being produced. The lead man came rushing over, looking panicked. He asked why I didn't come in early to get this sorted out. I explained that I don't work for free and my shift starts at 7:30, so that's when I show up. He pointed out that the machines were all down, and I explained that this was what happened when there was no proper handover. The previous shift had left without telling anyone about these problems. When he asked if I couldn't just come in a few minutes early to check things, I told him that if the company wanted me there early, they needed to pay me to be there early. I wasn't volunteering my time to fix their cost-cutting mistakes. Word spread quickly to the other shifts. The afternoon setup operator had the same conversation with his lead man. The night shift operator followed suit. Within 3 days, every shift was starting with machines down and operators standing around waiting for problems to be diagnosed and fixed. Production numbers started dropping dramatically. Parts that should have been running continuously were now sitting idle for an hour or more at the start of each shift. Quality issues increased because operators were trying to figure out proper settings without guidance. By Thursday, the plant manager was asking questions about why production numbers were down 20% that week. The lead man explained that the machines kept going down at shift change, and without the handover time, they couldn't prevent problems. When the plant manager asked why the setup operators weren't coming in early to handle this, the lead man told him we said we wouldn't work for free. The plant manager called me into his office that afternoon. He said he heard I was refusing to come in early to help with shift transitions. I told him that I wasn't refusing anything and that I showed up when my shift started just like the new schedule required. He said that the machines were going down and I explained that this was because there was no time for proper handover. The previous system worked because we had time to communicate critical information. When he asked if I couldn't just come in 15 minutes early, I asked if he was going to pay me for those 15 minutes. He brushed it off saying it was just 15 minutes, so I broke it down for him. 15 minutes a day, 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year, added up to over 60 hours of free work he was asking for. I asked if he would work 60 hours for free. He didn't have an answer for that. By Friday, the finance director was getting heat from corporate about the production decline. The plant manager was getting pressure from customers about delayed orders. The maintenance department was overwhelmed with problems that should have been caught during normal handovers. The following Monday morning, there was another meeting. The plant manager announced that they were reverting to the previous shift schedule, effective immediately. The finance director tried to protest about the cost savings, but the plant manager shut him down, saying the savings were meaningless if they couldn't meet production targets. He confirmed that the overlap time would stay. I asked for clarification that we were back to 8-hour paid shifts with 30-minute handovers, and he confirmed yes. The finance director looked like he'd swallowed something sour, but he didn't argue. Production returned to normal within 2 days. The other setup operators and I got our full hours back, and more importantly, we established that our time had value. A few months later, the finance director quietly transferred to another division. I heard his cost-cutting initiative was used as an example in corporate training of how not to implement efficiency measures. None of us had broken any rules or caused any trouble. We followed the new policy exactly and let the results speak for themselves. My wife and I had been married for some years now. At first, everything seemed perfect. She was charming, funny, and made me feel like I was the center of her world. But slowly things started to change. She became possessive, controlling, and would explode into rage whenever I wanted to spend time with friends or family. The breaking point came last month. I had decided I couldn't take it anymore. The constant accusations, the screaming matches, the way she'd guilt-trip me for wanting basic freedom, it was destroying me. I had been secretly saving money and looking for an apartment. I found a small place across town and put down a deposit. All I needed to do was pack my things and leave. That morning I woke up with a plan. I was going to tell her I was leaving, pack my essentials, and go. I had already moved most of my important documents to a safe deposit box, so I just needed my clothes and personal items. I walked into the kitchen where she was making coffee. She seemed unusually calm, which should have been my first warning sign. She greeted me with a cheerful good morning and told me she had made my favorite breakfast. She had prepared pancakes with bacon, something she rarely did anymore. I was suspicious but hungry, so I sat down and started eating. I told her we needed to talk. She asked about what, seeming genuinely curious. I took a deep breath and told her I couldn't do this anymore and that I was leaving. Her face didn't change at all. She just smiled and nodded. She suggested I eat my breakfast first and that we could talk after. Something felt wrong. About halfway through the meal, I started feeling dizzy. My vision became blurry and my limbs felt heavy. I asked her what she had put in the food. She admitted she had added some sleeping pills but assured me it was nothing that would hurt me permanently. I tried to stand up, but my legs gave out. She helped me to a chair in the living room, and before I knew it, she was tying my hands behind my back with rope. I demanded to know if she was insane and told her to untie me right away. She explained that she wasn't going to let me leave her because we were meant to be together forever. The next few hours were a nightmare. She sat across from me, talking about our future together as if nothing had happened. She brought me water when I got thirsty and even tried to feed me lunch, but I refused to eat anything else. She kept insisting that once I realized how much she loved me, I would understand why she had to do this. I told her this wasn't love but kidnapping, and that she was going to prison for this. She laughed and said no one would believe me. She claimed she would tell everyone I was having a mental breakdown. When the afternoon wore on, I could feel the effects of whatever she gave me starting to wear off. I knew I had to think of a way out. Fighting against the ropes wasn't working. She had done a thorough job tying them. I decided to try a different approach. I started speaking more softly and pretending to calm down. I told her that maybe she was right. She asked what I meant, her eyes showing a glimmer of hope. I explained that maybe I was just scared of commitment and that maybe I did love her too much to leave. Her eyes lit up with excitement. She asked if I really meant it. I said yes, but then complained that the ropes were cutting off my circulation and making my hands go numb. I asked if she could at least loosen them a little. She hesitated for a moment, then moved behind me to adjust the ropes. I told her that I couldn't run away now anyway because the drugs had made me too weak. This seemed to convince her. She loosened the ropes significantly and said she knew I would come to my senses because we were perfect together. I kept up the act for another 20 minutes, telling her how sorry I was and how much I loved her. When she went to the kitchen to make us some tea to celebrate our new beginning, I managed to slip my hands out of the loosened ropes. I quietly made my way to the front door and ran. I didn't stop running until I reached the police station 6 blocks away. The desk officer looked concerned when I burst through the doors, disheveled and panicked. He asked what he could help me with. I told him my wife had drugged me and tied me up and that I had just escaped. Within minutes, I was giving a full statement to a detective. They took photos of the rope marks on my wrists and collected a sample of my saliva to test for drugs. 2 patrol cars followed me back to the house. I stayed in one of the cars while the officers approached the front door. One of them knocked and announced they were police, demanding that she open up. Instead of answering the door, she opened an upstairs window and started shooting at the police cars with a handgun I didn't even know she owned. One of the officers yelled for everyone to get down and radioed that shots were being fired. The officers called for backup and took cover behind their vehicles. I was moved to a safe distance while more police cars arrived, followed by a SWAT team. For the next 4 hours, there was a standoff. She refused to come out and kept firing sporadically from different windows in the house. The negotiator tried talking to her through a megaphone, but she just screamed back about how no one was going to take me away from her. The SWAT commander gave her a final warning through the megaphone, telling her to come out with her hands up. She screamed back that she would never surrender because I belonged to her. Eventually, the shooting stopped. The SWAT team waited another 30 minutes before approaching the house. They found her barricaded in the bedroom, out of ammunition and sobbing. The whole thing made the local news. She was charged with kidnapping, assault, attempted murder of police officers, and several other felonies. During the trial, it came out that she had been planning this for weeks. She had researched different drugs online and had been hiding the gun in the house for months. The judge sentenced her to 15 years in prison. Her lawyer tried to argue that she was having a mental breakdown, but the evidence showed too much premeditation for that defense to work. I moved across the country after the trial, changed my phone number, deleted all my social media accounts, and started over completely. It took months of therapy to feel normal again, but I'm doing much better now. The scariest part is that I lived with this person for 3 years and never saw this side of her. I keep thinking about all the red flags I ignored or explained away. The way she'd go through my phone, how she'd get upset when I talked to other people, the guilt trips whenever I wanted independence. I'm sharing this story because I want people to know that this kind of behavior doesn't happen overnight. It builds up slowly, and by the time you realize how bad things have gotten, it can feel impossible to leave. But you have to try. And if someone in your life is showing these warning signs, take them seriously. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. I've been part of this one friend group. We met in college and somehow stayed close even after graduation. There are 5 of us total, all women, ages ranging from 21 to 26. We usually get along great and do everything together, but there's always been this one thing that sets me apart from them. I don't drink alcohol. It's not for any dramatic reason. I just never developed a taste for it, and honestly, I don't like how it makes me feel. Even a small amount makes me dizzy and nauseous. My friends know this about me and usually they're fine with it. I'm always the designated driver, and they joke that I save money when we go out. But lately, they've been pushing me more and more to just try different drinks. Yesterday was the birthday girl's 21st birthday. She'd been talking about this dinner for weeks, how she wanted to celebrate at this fancy Italian restaurant downtown. The place had cloth napkins and candles on every table. I was looking forward to it. I love good food, and it's not often we splurge on somewhere this nice. We got seated at a round table near the window. The birthday girl was practically glowing with excitement, talking about how this was her first real birthday dinner as a legal adult. The waiter came by to take our drink orders, and that's when things started going downhill. The birthday girl immediately suggested I get a cocktail since it was her birthday. I politely declined and said, "I'd just have water." But then another friend chimed in saying it was a special occasion and one drink wouldn't kill me. A third friend joined in, calling me boring and saying I should live a little. The fourth friend accused me of being a party pooper and said I should drink with the birthday girl since that's what she wanted. The waiter stood there looking uncomfortable while they all stared at me. I felt my face getting hot with embarrassment. I asked again if I could just get a soda instead. The birthday girl refused and told the waiter to give us more time while she picked out my drink. The waiter walked away, probably relieved to escape the awkwardness. But my friends weren't done pressuring me. One asked what the big deal was since it was just one drink. Another wondered if I was allergic to alcohol since I'd never mentioned that. The fourth friend jokingly asked if I was pregnant and hiding it from them. They all laughed, but I wasn't finding any of this funny. My hands were starting to shake under the table. I hate being the center of attention, especially when people are pressuring me to do something I don't want to do. I begged them to please just let me order food instead. The birthday girl said she already knew what I should get. She explained it was called a Bellini, something super light and fruity that was perfect for beginners. She promised I would love it. Another friend agreed, saying it was like drinking fancy juice and wasn't even really alcohol. When I pointed out that if it wasn't really alcohol, then why did I need to drink it, the third friend told me not to be difficult since it was the birthday girl's special day. This went on for what felt like forever. Every time I said no, they had another reason why I should say yes. The waiter came back twice, and both times the birthday girl sent him away, saying we needed more time. Other diners were starting to look over at our table. I wanted to disappear. Finally, I just couldn't take the pressure anymore. I gave in and agreed to get the drink, but I warned them that I wouldn't like it. The birthday girl got excited and flagged down the waiter to order the Bellini for me, along with cocktails for everyone else. I sat there feeling defeated and angry at myself for giving in. My fiancé always tells me I need to stand up for myself more, and here I was, proving him right. When the drinks arrived, mine looked innocent enough. It was pink and fizzy in a fancy glass. My friends were all watching me expectantly like I was about to perform some kind of show. I took a small sip and immediately regretted it. It was sweet but had that sharp alcohol taste that made my throat burn. I put the glass down and pushed it away from me. One friend asked how it was. I told them I didn't like it, just like I predicted. The birthday girl said I barely tried it and told me to take another sip. Another friend said sometimes you have to acquire the taste. The fourth friend reminded me not to waste it since the drink cost $18. I said I wasn't drinking any more of it. I said I tried it like they wanted, and I didn't like it. Thankfully, they finally dropped it, and we ordered our food. Dinner was actually pretty good. I got this amazing pasta with mushrooms and truffle oil. For a while, things felt normal again. We talked about work and relationships and weekend plans. I almost forgot about the untouched drink sitting in front of me, but then the bill came. The waiter set down one check for the whole table, which was normal since we usually split everything evenly. I pulled out my phone to calculate my portion, my pasta, a side salad, and water. I transferred my part to the birthday girl since she said she put it all on her card and we'd pay her back. One friend noticed I hadn't included my drink and asked why. I explained that I didn't want the drink in the first place and that they had made me order it. The birthday girl argued that I still ordered it and it was on the bill. I reminded them that I'd said no many times. Another friend claimed that nobody forced me to drink it and that I could have said no. I stared at her and reminded them that I did say no over and over. They kept pressuring me until I gave in. The fourth friend said I was an adult who made my own choices. The birthday girl said she wasn't trying to be mean, but I had ordered the drink and the waiter heard me say yes, so I needed to pay for it. I asked if she was kidding. I pointed out that she had ordered it after badgering me for 15 minutes. One friend said they were just trying to include me and accused me of always acting superior because I don't drink. Another agreed, saying I act like I'm better than them. I felt like I was in some kind of alternate reality. These were supposed to be my friends, and they were acting like I was the unreasonable one. I told them I never said I was better than anyone and that I just don't want to drink alcohol. I asked why that was so hard to understand. The birthday girl said fine, whatever, but told me to just pay for the drink so we could leave because people were staring. I refused, saying I wouldn't pay for something I never wanted and barely touched. She asked if I was really going to ruin her birthday over $18. She said this was so embarrassing and begged me to just pay it. I looked around the table at these four women who I thought were my friends, and not one of them was backing me up. Not one of them seemed to understand why I was upset. They were all looking at me like I was being the difficult one. That's when I stood up. I told them they were right, that this was embarrassing, but not for the reason they thought. I grabbed my purse and jacket and said I was sending money for my food but wouldn't pay for the drink. I explained that I wasn't going to sit there while they tried to make me feel guilty for having boundaries. The birthday girl protested that I couldn't just leave since we were friends. I told them that friends don't pressure each other into doing things they don't want to do, and they definitely don't try to make them pay for it afterward. I walked out of that restaurant feeling shaky but also strangely relieved. Once I got to my car, I sent the birthday girl money for my meal and a text explaining that if no one else was going to pay for the drink, they shouldn't have pressured me to order it in the first place. My fiancé was waiting up for me when I got home. When I told him what happened, he was furious on my behalf. He said I should distance myself from these people because real friends don't treat each other like that. But apparently my former friends don't see it that way. My phone has been buzzing non-stop since last night. Text after text calling me dramatic, selfish, childish. They're saying I ruined the birthday girl's special night over a stupid drink. One of them even said I owe her an apology and should pay for the drink anyway as a gesture of goodwill. I keep reading their messages and wondering if maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I should have just paid the $18 and kept the peace. But then I think about how they pressured me, how they dismissed my feelings, how they tried to make me pay for something I never wanted. The birthday girl sent me one final text this morning saying she guessed this was who I really was and told me not to bother reaching out to any of them again. You know what? Maybe she's right. Maybe this is who I really am. Someone who stands up for herself, even when it's uncomfortable. Someone who doesn't let people walk all over her just to keep the peace. I'm not reaching out to them again. And honestly, I'm starting to think that's not such a bad thing. I started working at this tech company about 5 years ago as a junior analyst in the data department. Fresh out of college, I was eager to learn and take on any challenge that came my way. The company culture was pretty collaborative, and people often helped each other out across different departments when needed. About 3 years into my job, one of my colleagues from the product integration department got really sick. She had to take medical leave for what ended up being almost 2 months. Since I had some bandwidth at the time and my manager thought it would be good experience, I volunteered to cover her basic responsibilities while she was out. Those 2 months were actually pretty amazing for my career development. I got to work with teams from all over the world, learned about product integration processes, and understood how different departments work together on complex projects. It wasn't my area of expertise, but I managed to keep things running smoothly until my colleague came back. Once she returned, I went back to my regular data analysis work and thought that chapter was closed. Fast forward to last year. I was deep into a quarterly report when I got an email from Karen, a project manager at one of our biggest clients. This company worked with practically every department in our organization on different projects, so I'd heard her name before but never directly worked with her. Karen sent me an email asking to schedule a meeting that same day at 2 p.m. to discuss integration issues with our product suite. I was confused because integration wasn't my department at all. I figured there was some mix-up, so I replied politely explaining that I worked in data analysis, not product integration, and suggested she reach out to the integration team directly. Her response came back within minutes. She told me she knew exactly who I was and that I had handled their account for 2 months back in 2022. She specifically wanted to work with me on this issue. I started to understand what was happening, but I wanted to be clear about the situation. I explained that while I had briefly helped the integration team when a colleague was on medical leave, that was years ago and only temporary. I told her I didn't have current knowledge of the products or processes and that the integration team would be much better equipped to help her. Instead of understanding, Karen doubled down. She said she didn't care if my role was temporary and that since I had worked on their account, I knew their setup. She refused to start over with someone new and demanded answers that day. She even said that if I provided answers, she would escalate to my actual team, but she wanted me to try first. This was getting ridiculous. I tried one more time to be reasonable, explaining that I genuinely didn't have access to current integration data or processes. I told her it would be doing her a disservice to guess at answers when the integration team had all the up-to-date information she needed. Her next email made my jaw drop. She declared that this was urgent and she wasn't taking no for an answer. She was scheduling a 4-hour workshop for that afternoon and said we needed to resolve the integration issues that day or they would miss their deadline. She expected me to walk through all their current configurations and provide solutions. 4 hours? For something that wasn't even my job? I told her I wouldn't be able to attend the workshop because it really wasn't my area, and I didn't want to waste her time or mine. I offered to connect her directly with the integration team lead who could actually help her. Karen responded by calling my behavior extremely unprofessional. She insisted she had specifically requested me because she knew I could handle their account. She warned that if the project failed because of my refusal to help, it would be on me. At this point, I was done trying to reason with her. I forwarded the entire email chain to my manager and the integration team lead, explaining the situation. My manager was pretty annoyed that a client was trying to pressure me into working outside my department, and the integration team lead was equally frustrated that Karen was trying to bypass his team. The integration team lead handled it perfectly. He called Karen directly and explained that I had only temporarily covered basic administrative tasks years ago and had no current knowledge of their systems. He offered to personally handle her concerns and even expedited her request to show good faith. But Karen wasn't done with me yet. Later that week, she sent me another email saying she hoped I was happy. She claimed that because of my refusal to help, they had to completely restructure their timeline. She admitted the integration team lead was helpful, but insisted the whole situation could have been avoided if I had just done my job. I didn't even respond to that one. I just forwarded it to my manager. Turns out when the integration team actually looked into Karen's urgent issues, most of them were problems on her company's end that they had created by trying to implement changes without consulting our team first. The solutions were straightforward once the right people were involved, and there was never any real deadline crisis. My manager later told me that Karen had tried to escalate a complaint about me to upper management. She had accused me of being uncooperative and unprofessional. Fortunately, my manager had documented everything and was able to show that I had handled the situation appropriately by directing her to the right team. The integration team lead also backed me up, explaining that Karen had a history of trying to pin project delays on our company when the issues were usually on her end. Apparently, she had tried similar tactics with other departments before. A few months later, I heard Karen's company had switched to a different vendor for their integration needs. The integration team was actually relieved because she had been such a difficult client to work with. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.